G'day and welcome to KrakenCast. This is the oceanic branch of the Vassals of Kingsgrave's Game of Thrones review series. Today we'll be discussing episode 10 of season 5, entitled Mother's Mercy. My name is Duncan, or Valkyrist on the forums, and joining me today from Australia we have Michael.
Hey, what's up? This is Carl Wadegi on the forums.
From New Zealand we have Joseph.
What's kicking? I go by Chow Gamer on the forums.
And from Indonesia we have Silvana.
Hello guys, Silvana, Silvabri in the forums.
So as you may have noticed, KrakenCast has had a bit of a hiatus for the past couple of episodes, and we're sorry about that, but the reason is basically we've only had about 3 hosts for most of the season, so when 2 of us aren't available, there's really no way to record unless it's just one person kind of recording into the void, which would be kind of lonely. But luckily we've been able to reconvene for the season finale. Before we get into the episode itself, I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts on the last few episodes. You know, did you enjoy them? Are there any highlights or any lowlights?
It's been a while since I've actually watched it, but definitely the 2 big central parts of each of the episodes we missed stick out. The Battle of Hardhome, which was amazing, probably one of the better battle scenes we've had to date, and sort of definitely head and shoulders above much of the rest of the season in terms of quality. That and watching Shireen be sacrificed, that was... I know a lot of people are angry about that, a lot of other Stannis fans, but so it was a very interesting set of emotions watching my favourite character barbecue his daughter, and I kind of enjoyed it. So, yeah, on the whole, I'm quite pleased with the last few episodes of the season.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things where, you hate them and you find them really problematic, but the actual scene itself is so effective. It's so well shot. The performances are amazing. It really affects you on this visceral sort of level. And then you compare that to Dawn, which is just this limp fish throughout the whole season. You kind of have to give props to things like Shireen's burning, at least in that category. Even if you
can't even be angry about the acting or anything like that. It's just,
it's just
your
what
grudging respect.
Exactly. It's more coming up from that book perspective. We have all these sort of notions about who these characters are, and they're diverting, and it's sort of a mixed bag, I guess. Silvana, did you have any highlights or lowlights from the past couple of episodes?
We got The Gift, Hardhome, Dance of the Dragons. I think my favorite would be Hardhome. No surprise there. I believe it serves as an example, actually, that the show can have its own greatness. It can adapt an off-screen scene into a very thrilling cinematic experience. As for the other 2 episodes, it's hit and miss, I guess. The Gift, I think the high point is Cersei's arrest, which is very well done. Dorne is another low point, which has been consistent throughout the season. And
I love how Dorne's just become this whipping boy of the whole season.
Yeah, gosh. And Dance of the Dragons. I watched it 3 times because I feel that there's something off with the last Dany scene with between Dany and Drogon. Maybe because the chaotic fights aren't as chaotic as me as a reader expected, and it was way maybe too simple. But I don't know. And of course we have the Syrian scene, and I really hate it. He's also one of my favorite characters, and I think the actress has successfully brought, a very minor character in the books into someone that we really love and enjoy to watch. So yeah, I think it's a loss for us watchers.
I know, because the actress is just so adorable and inquisitive, and you just love the relationship between her and Davos. He's sort of taken her under his wing as this surrogate daughter because he lost his own son, and it's the show's done this really good job of making you care about them, and then to have such a reversal of fortune, it just feels so sadistic. That's the sense I get from this season. It just feels really excessive in the sadism that it relies on.
You gotta wonder when Shireen was, going to get what was happening to her, and you have to go back to season 2? No, she wasn't in season 2. She was in season 3. And did they know then? Because that's when the sweet nice scenes start. Were they just all this time just building up to this?
I don't know. I think there is some consistency, because the Stannis they've chosen to craft, I think, is very different from the one in the books, even going back to season 4 where he's burning non-believers. This is a much darker, more ruthless Stannis, places less importance on justice and fairness and punishing, the punishment fits the crime. Not believing in your god isn't a crime. So you could argue that they have sort of forward knowledge of what Stannis may eventually become in later books, like this really cruel, religious, fanatic king. Maybe they're sort of playing with that end in mind. So that is a possible spoiler, but I just can't see him doing that in the books, like the Stannis that we leave in A Dance with Dragons. But maybe eventually he'll become that.
Now I can see Stannis burning Shireen, but I think the motive, I do see it as like a logical progression, but I see the motivation being quite different. Like, for some reason, the showrunners seem to think Stannis' driving force is his ambition, that he wants to be king and that he wants to be the powerful person. But I would disagree. I would say to me at least, it's always seemed his driving force is duty, and everything is just varying levels of duty. And that's why he murdered Renly, because Renly got between Stannis and his duty. And I can see in the same position, I think Book Stannis would still possibly burn Shireen, because if his army just flounders in the snow and dies, then he can't fulfill his duty. And as much as he loves his daughter, and as much as he doesn't believe in burning, if that was his only way to progress forward, I can see him doing that, which I know a lot of other book readers would disagree with me on that, however.
Well, I think DragonCast said it best. Like, if he's going to burn Shireen, it's going to be the others are marching on Winterfell. The fate of humanity itself is at risk. It's not going to be, he's got a flat tire in the snow after marching for a couple of days. He withstood the siege of Storm's End and lived off rats and book bindings for a year. He's not going to give up in the blink of an eye like that.
I'd say there's a different scale between him now and him at the Siege of Storm's End. Then he was just sort of doing what his rebellious brother told him. But at this point, everything in front of him, he needs to become king so that he can fight the others. If he stops now, it's still the same end result, even if the situation doesn't seem immediately as dire. But I can see where you're coming from.
I guess my impression of Stannis, like at this point in the series, is slightly colored by the spoiler chapter, which I won't reveal anything from, but it feels, because he doesn't have Melisandre around him, she's back at the wall, it feels much closer to the military commando Stannis, where he's reveling in the fight and the strategy of battle and not relying on that magical sort of religious zealotry and the good versus evil, fire versus ice kind of thing that Melisandre sucks him into.
Yeah, I definitely came around to him on that chapter, I think. Like, that was when I was like, oh, wow, Stannis. Oh, pretty cool.
Whoa, gotta put this down for a second. So, Michael, I think this is your first appearance on any of the VOK Game of Thrones reviews this season, is that right?
This season, yeah. I was on once last time.
So I'd be interested in how you've received this season up until now, like the first 9 episodes. Did it live up to past seasons? Did it disappoint you? Did you have any highlights?
Oh, well, I guess episode 8 was probably the standout. It was the new episode 9, and also because this episode 9 was a bit lackluster. Overall for the seasons, not excellent. Just pretty meh for this one. I'm trying to decide whether it's worse than season 2. So it's sort of, down at the bottom of the barrel there. And I think that while it had some really good things, like I would say Hardhome is maybe a bit better than Blackwater, when it really deviated and just sucked, it really sucked, and it was really painful to watch. So yeah. I think it's at the bottom. It's still all right. It's not terrible. It's still entertaining to watch, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm a huge fan of Hardhome. I think I said that was my favorite episode since season 1 before I'd actually even read the books, because I think it really captured that feeling of the first time you don't know what the hell's going on, and that fear and that excitement and that dread. And then the sequence itself was just masterful. For all the inconsistencies and the low points and the sort of really problematic elements of this season, I think that I'm glad I watched it for Hardhome alone. I thought that was spectacular. But let's get into the episode itself with a round of lemon cake ratings for Mother's Mercy.
I quite liked it, all things considered. I think once the series got moving in the last few episodes, it definitely jumped up a marker. And even though a lot of things were rushed, and I'm still kind of angry, well, not angry, just bugged by how Stannis ended up, I'd give it a solid 3.5, close to 4-ish. Yeah, I enjoyed it, even though it could have been done much better.
Okay, what did you think, Silvana?
I'll give it 4 lemon cake. So it's one of the highest rated episodes for me this season. The other one would be Kill the Boy. Episode 10 has great solid scenes, including Cersei's walk of atonement or shame, which is exactly what I picture. Great acting by Lina. And I like Arya's brutal murder of Meryn Trant. I think it's way better. Yeah, it's way better than Darian's murder. And the aftermath, it's going to be interesting to see her next journey. I like the Meereen scenes as well. We have the new triumvirate with Tyrion getting his second chance in acting as, Hand of the King probably, and the sudden appearance of Varys from all places in Meereen. I was surprised actually. Oh, that's Varys. Is he going to kill Tyrion?
Oh, that would be a twist, yeah.
Yeah, oh god, no. And, Dorne, still the downside, but I got used to it. Only have one or two Netflix, I guess. And my least favorite part is actually the Battle of Ice, or the Battle of Winterfell. I think it was a bit anticlimactic.
What did you think, Michael?
Something I'm continually noticing as a bit of a pattern for their final episodes. They want to put everything into it, have all these wow moments, and the episode just feels, as you said, Joseph, it feels very rushed. Like they leave Stannis, particularly, that felt really rushed and a bit strange. And Dany got like 5 seconds of screen time. So what would I give it overall? This had the best dawn scene of the season, which isn't really saying much, but I'll give it a 3, I think.
Okay.
The walk, again, that was my favorite, most faithful to the books. I'll give it a 3.
Yeah, it's a tough episode to rate. I think what I said on the forums was it was visually stunning with some really powerful performances and moments, but I'm starting to get like misery fatigue more than any other episode, including the Red Wedding. This just felt like a meat grinder with character after character being consumed by death and horror with no real sense of hope. I'm starting to feel like there's no one really left to root for or invest in for me. But that said, there was some great stuff in the episode, and some not so great stuff. I think Cersei's walk, I agree, was a very powerful sequence, and it stands alongside the Battle of Hardhome as one of the highlights of the season for me. The rest of the episode was fairly good, but problematic for various reasons, except for Dawn, which, as ever faithfully, is hot garbage. But with all of that in mind, I will give Mother's Mercy possibly the last episode of Game of Thrones I watch, unless The Winds of Winter comes out within the year. I will give it 3.5 lemon cakes out of 5. But let's get into our main discussion, starting in the frosty grey waste above Winterfell. At Stannis' camps, the snows are melting, and Melisandre declares that the Lord of Light has looked kindly upon their sacrifice and cleared the path for victory at Winterfell. However, they are interrupted by the news that half of Stannis' army has deserted and his wife has hanged herself. Melisandre finally loses hope and flees the camp. Stannis orders his men to march onwards. They arrive at Winterfell, only to be routed and destroyed by the Bolton cavalry. Brienne abandons her vigil over Sansa to go confront Renly's murderer. In the aftermath of the slaughter, a wounded Stannis stumbles through the woods before being confronted by Brienne. She declares his execution in the name of Renly Baratheon and brings her blade down onto Stannis' defeated body. So, what did you guys think of this?
Okay, nitpick. Why did the sellswords desert Stannis? Like, they specifically mentioned, the sellswords have run off. It's like, they're not known for their high moral caliber. They just care if you pay them. It should be the Stannis' loyal men who followed him from Dragonstone to be the ones that desert him. Yeah.
The ones his loyal men know to fear him. They know that running from Stannis is bad. Nothing stops Stannis.
There was a funny gif that I posted on the thread, which is the Iron Bank going to Davos and saying, "So about that loan you co-signed with Stannis."
Poor Davos.
Poor Davos.
Do you guys think it's a bit out of character for Melisandre to be so quickly, losing hope over Stannis? Because he was very fanatic.
I really hated Melisandre this episode. Just like the smugness she gets when the snow starts to melt. She rushes over and says, "I've done it, I'm amazing," and then she just bolts. It's just such cowardice.
Yeah, just so inconsistent.
So HBO version now is Balon Greyjoy is the winner of the War of the Five Kings.
That's right, yes. By default, the Krakens have won.
Yeah, we should celebrate.
Open some champagne.
Although we're probably going to see him, getting assassinated.
Yeah,
by
first
the,
episode
season 6.
of season 6. He just Arya just
Yeah.
hacking him to bits, and we're like, oh, put the champagne
Yeah.
away.
But he's got another year as a
That's
winner.
right. Another year to enjoy his victory.
To just sit in Pike off screen, just merrily contemplating the war he's not doing anything in.
Salisa's suicide really, it seemed to hit Stannis hard, and it felt like the March on Winterfell was this act of suicide in a way, because he must know that he's going to lose, and even when he sees the Bolton cavalry charging towards him, it's always like, we're not going to fall back, we're not going to make some kind of defensive position, we're not going to go into the trees, we're just going to face them oncoming and just embrace death. And that's what it felt like for Stannis, and probably the men who are loyal to him. It's like, we've come this far, we're just going to accept our fate. We're just going to die as we lived, fighting for this impossible dream, which was kind of depressing and poignant, but yeah.
It was all very out of character for Stannis, sort of. Like he had valid reasons to break, but it's just sort of very, I guess, anticlimactic for someone that, even in the show, is regularly hyped as one of the best generals in Westeros. Ends up just finishing his campaign by just sort of rambling along in no specific order and just, okay, we're being attacked. The end. For a very good military commander, he wasn't commanding very well.
Yeah, but it feels like the last couple of episodes, Stannis has had a dramatic sort of decline in how impressive he was. I think like the first 5 episodes, he was great. He was very imposing, stern, and commanding loyalty and impressing Jon Snow. And then as soon as he gets on the march, it just all sort of falls apart. And like he didn't really seem to have a plan beyond just Melisandre will save me.
Yeah, he just got tossed the idiot ball and just ended up doing significantly less Stannis-y stuff all of a sudden.
I get the sense that they're really trying to wash their hands of Stannis. They're just like, all right, let's get rid of Shireen, let's get rid of Salisa, and get rid of Stannis. All done. No more Stannis left.
Yeah, I mean, the Baratheon line is completely obliterated in this. There's no one left except for Gendry, I guess, somewhere in the middle of the narrow sea, floating around in circles.
Still rowing.
He's just gone down to the Stepstones and started up his own pirate kingdom.
Yes.
Like we haven't seen him.
We can only hope.
And he just shows up again as an Aurane Waters substitute, just becomes Cersei's master of ships, just incognito.
Or Aegon 6.
Yeah, it's like you say a good point, Michael, about how they seem to be wanting to wash their hands of Stannis. I think they've been wanting to wash their hands of Stannis since they introduced Stannis, or at the very least since the Battle of the Blackwater happened. Because it just seems like the showrunners aren't big fans of Stannis, or they don't get him, or they just really don't think he's a main or important character.
Well, I think it speaks to sort of shallow writing, because they're happy to use Stannis for these big, bold, badass moments where he charges into the wall, defeats the wildlings, he's attacking the Blackwater, it's Commando Stannis first on the beaches. But when it's just him in Dragonstone, they don't really have any interest in unpacking his character or his motivations or his backstory or what kind of person he is, his sort of familial problems with his brother, feelings of inferiority, feelings of entitlement. They don't really care about any of that. They're not interested in that. So it feels like they want the big moments, but they don't want to put in the effort to sort of earn them.
Well, it's even at the wall where Stannis is in the books, it definitely felt like it was a massive, out of nowhere, it was the bookend for the whole siege of the wall. And they just removed it from the big Wham episode and just shunted it in at the start of episode 10, which I, from memory, complained mightily over last year. But it just seems like he's not a big concern to the showrunners, and it almost seems in a lot of ways that he's been written like a villain, like he's the person that sort of goes against more likable characters, which ironically ended with him losing at the hands of the Boltons, which is sort of a twist.
Well, I thought that too in the past couple of seasons, but I really thought once he'd gotten to the wall, it was that sort of change where they didn't necessarily spell it out like he does in the books, like the cart before the horse kind of thing, where he's realizing what being a king means. But it felt like he'd matured in the first 5 episodes of this season. He'd realized something about himself. I don't know, but then it all just sort of collapsed.
I feel like their take on the character, right from the beginning, focusing on the ambition instead of the duty, that makes him a very bland character. a person that sees themselves as the king because that is their role. That's what they're born to do. That's their duty. That's interesting and unconventional. That's the Stannis we know and love. But yeah, the one they've written, they really don't know what to do with because he just is kind of so, I guess, conventional. The spurned brother and nothing else.
I guess in Stannis' mind, it's this sort of utilitarianism where he sort of forsakes his family and what he actually wants. Because I think that was a comment in the last episode where he's like, what if you realize what kind of man you are, even if you don't want to be? Where he actually does feel love for his daughter and he doesn't want to hurt her. But it's just, he sees this person that he always thought he would be, he was always destined to be, and he just feels incomplete until he's embodied that role. This kind of long-promised hero, this conquering victor that sort of Melisandre keeps promising him, keeps like nourishing that dream that he'll somehow live up to the shadow of his brother. And he keeps chasing it and sort of cutting away everything that makes him him and cutting away everything that he loves. And in the end, he's lost everything, and it wasn't worth it because he lost the battle. And, when Brienne finally finds him, it's almost like, just put me out of my misery.
Yeah, that was an anticlimactic death. Didn't even see the body, didn't even see the head roll, which is very strange. I also felt that Brienne killing Stannis was very undeserved. Like, it's not like Brienne charged out into the army and fought Stannis in single combat and slew him. She was just like walking along the road and he's like, oh, there's Stannis. Oh, wait, kill Stannis is on my to-do list. I might as well get this out.
She waited for Bolton to do the dirty work and then just finished him off.
Yeah, like he was bleeding out. Really, you just put him out of his misery.
But it is interesting that we don't see the killing blow. Like, why would they choose to do that unless they wanted his death to be ambiguous? And there is quite a few ambiguous deaths in this episode. One theory I thought was they wanted to create like a juxtaposition between her and Ramsay for some reason. Like, they wanted to... Because revenge is kind of a small theme in this episode. I think we get sort of 3 eye for an eye vendettas being carried out. Brienne, Ilaria, and Arya. And maybe they're showing the poisonous effects, that she's some kind of contrast with Ramsay suggests that Brienne is losing who she is. Like, she abandons her post watching over Sansa to go get revenge. So maybe that's a kind of thing. But it does seem like an odd editing choice. I'm not sure why they chose to do that. Like, I don't see any possible reason why they would keep Stannis alive. He has no possible power to come back from this. He's lost everything. He has no army. What possible difference could he make in future novels that they would keep him around? Or show that they would keep him around?
I've read some theories about like his plot line about him going around the north gathering support. Like, he may do that, although I can't see... Like, that's the most plausible theory for why they would keep him alive, but even then, I can't see why they wouldn't have just done that this season. Yeah. And had him getting... Like, it seems like his storyline and his arc is ended, inconclusively, but definitely.
It's almost like... Couldn't they have done this without killing Shireen? Would they keep him being this sort of ambiguous, possibly heroic role? And we're actually... Because no one is rooting for Stannis when he's fighting the Boltons. We hate him at this point. Wouldn't it be more effective if we were sort of rooting for him and we were sad that the Boltons had defeated him? And when Brienne came into contact with him, we had a grey feeling about it. Like, Brienne, we don't actually want you to kill Stannis. We've been rooting for him this whole time. But they sort of cut all of that off at the heels.
I think it goes back to...
Yeah, that would have been a tragedy. And this is just,
This is just put this dog out of his misery, yeah.
Yeah, it goes back to what I said about the showrunners portraying Stannis as this type of villain. Like he did this bad thing, this terrible thing, and sort of with this black and white morality, they feel that they had to just throw misfortune upon Stannis. His army deserts him, his wife commits suicide, he ends up getting just caught and pinned and his army destroyed, and then he gets killed by Brienne, and it's just sort of, he did this terrible thing, now to just throw traumas at him to punish him removes a lot of the greyness and the is no good or bad guys nature of A Song of Ice and Fire that a lot of people are drawn to.
And I agree, it is a little contrived to have Brienne deliver the killing blow, but I guess there is sort of a poetic aspect to his first sin, killing Renly, coming back to haunt him. Like, that was the thing that set him off on this course. And now it's finally the thing that'll do him in at the end. Renly, his brother, his original sin kind of thing.
Yeah, it certainly would have felt weird if Brienne didn't kill him. Like, they had to get those bookends in. But, like, I don't know, the death just felt wrong on a fundamental level, which makes me certain that this is not how it's happening in the books.
Oh, I don't. Yeah. No way. Is this how it's happening in the books?
This is how it's going to go down?
No.
No, I think there's going to be a far more involved battle. Like, Stannis is going to put up way more of a fight in the upcoming books, I think. Even if he does eventually lose, it's going to be... Bolton is going to... Because, there's so many elements that's not in the show. Like the fact that all these people loyal to the Starks are in Winterfell at the moment. So even if Stannis does lose, Bolton's armies will be bloodied, and then maybe that's the time when Lady Dustin and Lord Manderby take over the castle and imprison Bolton, whereas that's not even an option in the show.
Yeah. I think, for the books at least, I sort of believe in the Grand Northern Conspiracy, that Stannis is going to end up dying because he ends up relying too much on the Northern Lords, who are like... Yeah, I think Stannis is going to win the Battle of Ice in the books, and that he's going to take over the North, and then the Northern Lords are going to betray him once Stannis has shunted the Boltons out. And that's way too complex for the showrunner's opinions of your average show viewer, and way too time-consuming. So I think they're just, Stannis just lost, the end. I think they're just cutting corners.
I'd be very surprised if Stannis lost, simply because I think the pink letter is a lie. And it would seem strange that they would create a lie that wasn't a lie. And obviously there's just way more happening in the North. There's way more different directions it can go. Whereas in the show, it's the Boltons now have unchallenged dominion over the North. Like, where do we even go from this point?
Yeah, he's uncontested. It's so strange. But yeah.
Because we have none of that North remembers stuff, apart from a couple of peasants here and there. They're none of the loyal...
But they're all flayed.
Yeah, they're all flayed.
Ramsay got them all.
Exactly. Ramsay's way too efficient in the show version. That could be a possible storyline in the next season. The Northern Lords coming together, the Northern Conspiracy coming together, and maybe Sansa could play some part in that. I hope. She has nothing else to do other than die in the snow.
She can just trudge in the snow, yeah. She's got no army to run to now. It's just, yeah.
I also saw another theory where Brienne, like the last words that Stannis says are, "Do your duty." And maybe she stays her sword, or she hits the wood of the tree because she realizes her duty is to Sansa, not to kill Stannis. But I doubt, again, what's the point of keeping Stannis alive at this point?
Why not do both?
Why not do both, yeah.
Just does kind of mirror the, in the books, her whole, she's going to just die at the hands of the Brotherhood, but then where it happens and da-da-da-da-da, things suddenly change on a dime. It does parallel that to a degree, sort of an ambiguous last-minute thing that changes the outcome of Brienne's, bookend for the book/season. That's something. How did the Boltons just manage to pull a massive cavalry army out of nowhere? They were just complaining a couple weeks ago that they didn't have near enough horses as Stannis, and suddenly all of Stannis' horses die/disappear, and the Boltons somehow managed to teleport a whole bunch from somewhere else.
It doesn't make any sense. And the fact
those are the sellswords, maybe.
Yeah, they turned to Bolton.
Oh, they went over. You're better than Stannis, buddy.
Yeah.
I'll take the flayer over the child burner.
Yeah, this is getting a bit too real, man. That is the sellsword modus operandi there, switch to the winning side. It doesn't make a lot of sense, especially the fact that Bolton says, a couple of episodes, it's the smart choice is to stay behind our walls. Only a fool would risk open combat. But I guess maybe Stannis was so defeated at that point that, finish him quickly, don't draw this out any more than it needs to be. Don't risk our supply chains, access to our roads, just kill him here and now.
Oh, yeah, I can only imagine maybe Bolton just severely overestimated Stannis' power, and the attrition of winter and the mutiny really sort of... Roose just looking out over the battlements thinking, you know what, maybe I could swing this.
Another interesting possibility is that maybe Ramsay is getting more and more power. There's a bit of a... Because, Ramsay's option was to let's go out and meet him in the field and crush him. And you see Ramsay in this episode gleefully killing, surrendering soldiers. So maybe he was the one to lead that charge. And it's maybe that could be a possible plot point where it's this tug of war over power between Ramsay and Roose in Winterfell. I don't know. Maybe the Northern Lords could exploit that. Who knows?
Just as an aside, I'm getting kind of like bugged by how sort of a whimsical, invincible like terror that Ramsay is. Like he just does things and he just succeeds because he's Ramsay and he's crazy and he can't lose at anything.
He has that crazy strength.
Yeah, like with Asha and Yara, I should say, and co like storm the Dreadfort. He just wanders in without a shirt and kills them, and him and 20 good men manage to just waltz into Stannis' camp and set everything on fire. Like he's just this whimsical
Timed explosives.
Exactly, with grenades and landmines, apparently.
Where they got the horses, Ramsay just willed them into existence, and lo and behold, they appeared.
And it's not like how are you going to sneak past tents? Like, did they dig little mole burrows into beneath the tents?
In the snow.
Like, yeah, okay, they know the north, but you're not going to be able to sneak around a guarded, army pavilions anyway, I guess.
I just, more tangential, but it was an image I saw of just Melisandre just looking over her shoulder and seeing fire and just, shit, if this army's undone by fire, I am seriously out of a job.
Yes, true. Oh, that shot of the burning horse running past, that was kind of spectacular. But, yeah.
The ponyta?
Yeah, the Rapidash.
Oh, that's another nitpick. The sellswords mutinied and they took out all our horses. Like 20 minutes later, Melisandre shows up at the wall on a horse.
Yeah, they left one.
Like yelled at my screen when I saw that. Yeah.
So many contradictions. Like, say one thing, 20 minutes later,
it's
something
odd,
else.
Yeah. I guess they didn't want to touch her horse, so they should put a hex on him or something.
Just anyone other than Melisandre that touches it bursts into flames.
The only other thing I noted was the overhead shot of the army, the cavalry surrounding and interspersing over Stannis' infantry. Kind of mirrored what Stannis did to the wildlings at the end of Season 4. But now Stannis is the one being surrounded and crushed, so that was kind of like even the overhead sort of drone camera angle.
That did look pretty cool. Like you could really see who had the superior numbers, who was doing the cool tactics.
Yeah, I mean they didn't have time for a full-on battle, but it's kind of you got a sense of the scale, but it was all a bit quick.
Kind of makes you wish that they would like have a big open battle in a field and see sort of really cool overhead shots of like units moving.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be enough to base a whole battle on, but just to intersperse that and to have an actual full battle that they do have time and budget for. That would be cool if we get that eventually.
During the confusion of the battle, Sansa manages to escape her chambers, where she makes her way to the broken tower and lights the candle. However, she is caught by Miranda, who threatens her with a crossbow. Theon is finally broken from his trance, and he shoves Miranda over the railing to her death. The gates open and the Bolton soldiers start streaming back into the castle. Sansa and Theon clasp hands and jump from the parapets of Winterfell towards the snow outside the walls.
I thought Miranda was a bit out of line just pointing that bow. Like, even if she's just a broodmare, Ramsay's not going to be happy if you, shot her in the leg.
Yeah. I guess because she realized that Sansa was lighting the candle and maybe Ramsay shared that information that, he wouldn't cared what happened.
She did make a really good splat when she hit the ground, though.
She did, yeah.
Bam! And I was like, yeah, take that, bitch.
It was very satisfying, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It wasn't Ramsay, but it was close.
Miranda has tremendous upper body strength to hold the bow drawn for so long.
Yeah, she held it wrong, actually. So.
Sansa didn't know that.
Sansa didn't know that.
But what did you make of Theon and Sansa jumping off the wall? I mean, I know that happens in the books, but it seems pretty high. I can't imagine them surviving that, no matter how much snow is beneath them.
It was like, an 80-foot wall with a 40-foot snowdrift in the book? I'm just pulling those numbers completely out of nowhere, but they sound about right.
Especially now that
something huge.
Yeah.
Especially now that Melisandre's melted all the snow. Splat.
Butterfly effect, yeah. Stannis sacrificing his daughter gets Theon and Sansa murdered.
Melisandre ruins everything.
I also feel that Theon standing up to Miranda or Ramsay, they didn't really telegraph this enough. When was the last time we had a good Theon piece with Sansa? Episode 6, episode 7? It was just like, oh yeah, Theon, he's Reek, and now he's Theon again.
No, there was a moment. What was the episode where he reveals that the Stark children are alive? Was that 8? Or
Oh, that might have been 8.
yeah, I thought that was pretty. That was cool. You could see the conflict within him. That was the moment where he starts saying, I betrayed Rob. I know I deserve this. Like that. I thought that was a bit of a bridge towards this moment. But I liked this scene. I liked it from Theon's perspective, I guess. Like, I loved when he pushes Miranda over and the Greyjoy music starts playing. And I found myself actually really happy that Theon had finally redeemed himself, probably even more than the books, because I think Theon is a more sympathetic character in the show. So that was kind of the hero moment of the show for me, as bleak as it all was. Theon sort of remembering his name and all that.
Well, that's what I always liked about Theon's story arc and Dance, is that standard Ironborn saying, "What is dead may never die," just plays so well into it. And Theon had died a long time ago, but he was able to still claw his way back in the end.
I thought, like Stannis, Sansa and Theon jumping off the parapets also had this feeling of suicide. Sansa has that really gut-wrenching line, "If I'm going to die, let it happen while there's still some left of me." And I think that was kind of the decision they made, where they still felt their humanity within them and a connection with who they used to be, or the memories of their family that hadn't been destroyed by Ramsay and destroyed by the cruelty of the world. So I like that. In a way, it's almost a reverse of Stannis's suicide, where he's lost everything. He's lost everything about himself, and this is just, we march on to this dying dream that I have of becoming king. Whereas Sansa and Theon clasp hands, and it's this heartbreaking moment of reconciliation between the two sort of wounded characters. They're both victims, they hate each other in all other circumstances, but they recognize the humanity in each other, and it's like, let's just say goodbye to this world together.
Are they going to meet Brienne and Pot, do you think?
That's what I think, yeah. They're pretty close to each
Who
other.
else?
They've got to run into each other. Yeah, exactly. Who else are they gonna... What else do they have to do in this storyline other than to meet up?
Ramsay again.
Oh yeah, Ramsay. Just flays everyone for 10 episodes.
Whimsical super Ramsay. He'll probably just be skipping along the snow and just bump into them right as they fall.
Shirtless, spattered with blood, cackling.
Yeah, like Legolas.
Yeah. I really hated what they did to Sansa this season. I just felt like... And it really didn't pay off. Like, she had nothing to do after that point beyond just being threatened and abused and being part of Theon's redemption and Brienne's vow. And it's such a far cry from the novels, where she is this, player in the Game of Thrones, and she's recovering from her trauma, and she's, being Littlefinger's protege. So it's just like a complete 180 on what she is in the books. And ultimately, I don't think for any real reason they didn't explore what she was going for in any meaningful way beyond just using her as a plot device. Yeah, I didn't like it.
Contrasts so much with how last season ended, where we had Darth Sansa walking down the stairs of the Eyrie, and it was just sort of, it's amazing to think how much they backslid in 10 episodes on her arc.
Exactly, and the culmination of her story was just lighting a candle to call Brienne for help and then being rescued by Theon. It just feels like, again, I think there's a lot of compelling things in the Winterfell storyline with Roose and Ramsay and what's going on there politically and familially, and what Theon's going for. I thought his performance was really compelling, and maybe some value with Brienne. I mean, she was pretty much sidelined for the whole season, but I could see what they were trying to get to. But ultimately, to use Sansa, the protagonist, more protagonist than any of those characters, in such a shallow, manipulative way, it didn't pay off for me. I don't think they earned that horrible moment at all. So no forgiveness for that scene.
Fundamentally wrong, like with Shireen being burnt in that way. There was just something I can't describe. That, Sansa's virginity, I see as being something really important to her, and I kind of wonder if she's going to keep her virginity till the end of the books. Maybe, we'll see, but it's wrong.
I mean, I can't mind read what the showrunners haven't planned, and maybe what they were trying to do but didn't manage to do, or didn't execute well, but it just felt like they wanted to do something shocking, something that would generate controversy, something that would be talked about, because that is a big part of the show's reputation, these really shocking moments, and they didn't necessarily have those things from the source material, so they just invented them.
Yeah, I cannot wait until she meets Littlefinger again and then says, "You bastard!
Oh
You
my
left me in
god.
Winterfell."
I just want her to flay Littlefinger. I hate Littlefinger more than anyone in this season. Ugh.
It's not his fault, guys. He didn't know. He didn't know anything about Ramsay.
Yeah, I guess that was
Because that's exactly what Littlefinger would do. He wouldn't
because
research
Littlefinger doesn't
his-
have research people. He doesn't have dossiers.
He's
on
got
everyone
no
in
agents.
Westeros.
Nothing like that.
He has no spies. He just shoots from the hip. Yeah, that whole storyline just went south so fast.
Yeah, I'm just starting to wonder where Sansa and Brienne and Pod and Theon is going to be next in season 6, I guess. Maybe the Wall, since Sansa recently found out that Jon is the Lord Commander there, which is going to have a very unpleasant surprise as well if he arrives in the Wall. Or maybe to the Vale, I don't know.
Too late for that.
I'm guessing they'll probably want to link up with the Vale storyline that's happening that is going to happen in the Winds of Winter, so it'll be awkward and it won't make any sense, but Littlefinger and Sansa.
Why not just go there in the first place if that was your plan? I guess, meeting up with Brienne's one thing, and then Brienne takes her somewhere. I guess the Vale would make the most sense. Maybe Riverrun? Maybe they could get back to the Siege of Riverrun storyline, possibly? Brotherhood Without Banners. I know they're casting the Septon Maribald, so maybe they're returning to the Riverlands next season, and a few characters could coalesce there.
Yeah, have fun with that, D&D. Trying to figure out what comes next.
The other option, as I mentioned, would possibly be the Northern Conspiracy. And maybe having Sansa playing a role, having actual agency in the show again, and playing a role in that, being a power broker, because, Lord Manderley is a big character in the books. They could introduce him next season. Maybe Brienne takes her to White Harbor, or the Umbers, maybe. We know Rickon was apparently going to the Umbers, so I guess we could still have some storyline in the North, but the Bolton triumph is pretty uncontested at this point.
Well, we have some Manderley died at the Red Wedding, so they've set the table for that, but they seem to have apparently forgotten that table was set and hastily erected a new one out of twigs.
True, yeah. I don't think anyone noticed that guy, though.
I feel like that was a bone to us book readers.
Yeah, that was like fan service. I doubt they're actually going to pay that off. The sigh of resignation of every A Song of Ice and Fire fan. Well, I will say the stuff in the North, there's definitely a change in aesthetic this season. Just a lot of blacks and whites and the snows and the cold mists. I think it really created a great atmosphere of coldness and bleakness. The idea that winter is gradually covering places like the North and the Wall and slowly creeping its way down to the Southern Kingdoms. I thought that, it looked really nice. Just the contrast of colors, the flames and the white snows and the shadows and the trees. I thought it just visually really striking.
Yeah, there was basically no green, especially in that final battle. It was all just snow.
Yeah, and even the final shot we see in the episode, again, with that really stark, bleak contrast between black and white. But yeah, any more to say on Winterfell?
No.
Okay,
No.
Shall we move on to Bravos?
Yes.
Yes, let us.
Take the train into even bleaker territories. Okay, so posing as a child prostitute, Arya sneaks her way into Merentrant's bedchambers.
I shouldn't laugh, but that's just such a
I know,
out of
it's-
context, such a weird way to start a recap.
It's like
Sorry.
it couldn't get any worse, and then Merentrant pops up on the screen, and it's like, oh god, I need a drink for this. Anyway.
With the Dornish Red.
He begins to beat her for his pleasure, but then she removes her mask and proceeds to stab him viciously with a knife, blinding him in both eyes. As he writhes on the floor in pain, she tells him that she is Arya Stark, and that he is no one, nothing, before slitting his throat. Back in the House of Black and White, Jaqen chastises her for using the power of the Faceless Men to kill for personal vendettas. Unlike him and the Waif, she is not ready to relinquish her identity. As punishment, he takes away her sight.
Could they be any more heavy-handed in telling us that Merentrant is a bad boy?
Oh my
a
god.
baddie.
It's so excessive.
Initially, I would have defended it by saying, "Oh, this is Arya's in, so that she can, actually be a child prostitute and engage in that weird, messed up sex, and that would at least, or just kissing him, and at least that would show that she's like dehumanizing and becoming like a child soldier." But she doesn't even do that. Like, she could have just jumped in through a window and stabbed him, or any number of scenarios that didn't involve child prostitution.
Like, it's not enough that he's a violent thug. He has to be a pedophile. It's not enough that he's a pedophile. He has to beat his victims for sexual gratification. It's just, again, it's that we need to make it shocking and hardcore and edgy. It's just really excessive and manipulative.
Yeah, it's like there was I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly certain that there weren't any Meryn Trant fans that were going to be incredibly disappointed by him dying.
Yeah, there was no one on the fence about Meryn Trant.
He must have some redeeming qualities. I bet he loves his wife.
Ugh. Well, he's not married.
Well,
he's
he did
that was the joke.
A lot of people have commented on the horror aesthetic of this season, with the White Walkers and with the Stone Man, and a lot of shots like Ramsay, obviously, that whole horror show in Winterfell, and the burning of Shireen, Cersei in her cell just screaming into the void. And I think, for me, that this was probably the most horrifying image of Arya standing next to Trant as his eyes are cut open and he's got a sock stuffed in his mouth, and his face almost looks like a slither of skin just kind of plastered onto a person, like Hannibal Lecter or something, when he puts the man's skin on his face, and it's just kind of slimy and glossy and reptilian.
And he's moaning as well, and it's just very inhuman.
Yeah. It is very inhuman because he doesn't have eyes, he doesn't have a mouth. It's the pain beneath this sort of dead, empty face. So that was just taking that one still image was just really sort of disturbing.
I did enjoy Arya just spazzing out and stabbing. I was wondering if we were going to get like a reference to like the tickler scene. Maybe she'd go, how many? It wouldn't make sense. But yeah, I like that she was just going axe crazy.
But I mean, the tickler, I guess we sort of... she wasn't going crazy in the beginning of season 4, was she? Was pretty cold. And
no, it was the opposite, really.
But in the books, the tickler is this moment of release and passion and anger, whereas Trant was... I guess there was some anger there, but it was more like she was savouring the violence. She was savouring the revenge. So it's a much more... I mean, she's slipping into that sociopathy and psychopathy, that really dehumanizing sense of self and empathy for other human beings. Not that you should have empathy for Meryn Trant, but just any human being, any person's ability to feel pain. It's comparable to Ramsay in how she treats like the human body.
I did like the use of the face masks. I reckon that was pretty neat, seeing that for once.
Yeah, that was that's the first time we've seen it, I think. I guess we've seen more sort of ambiguous, where he sort of turns away and then he'll turn back and he'll have a different face. But this was just like rapid fire, pulling slivers of skin over and over again.
Dude, she was tripping balls.
Yeah, it was very, I mean, this whole storyline is just really weird and almost has like this House of Undying vibe to it, where nothing is permanent. Everything's just kind of fluid in what reality actually means.
I was interested that they don't appear to use like the blood sacrifice, or not sacrifice, but just... Because when Arya gets it in the books, they slice some of her face, and I never really understood how much of it they were slicing off, and they needed the blood to energize the skin, but none of that's happening here, I guess, just for simplicity.
Yeah, I guess it's almost like some kind of medical thing where the nerves need to connect to each other, but it's spoken in sort of medieval fantasy kind of language, maybe, I don't know.
Some weird blood magic's going on, I think.
Yeah, magic's probably the best way to describe it.
I do like how magic's starting to creep into the show. Like early on, they made a point of downplaying how much magic there was, and it's nice to see the showrunners kind of warming up to more like eldritch and terrifying magical things, like the full-on, like the Battle of Hardhome, seeing these masks work, like debatably Shireen's sacrifice actually working, like the sort of.
And the sort of arcane horror of magic. This isn't fun. This isn't Harry Potter whimsy. It's magic is something that's unnerving. You don't actually want to delve more, but you do because you want to see what the possibilities are. But the more you delve, the more frightening it becomes. I guess Danny's dragons are kind of the antithesis to that because they're kind of posed as cool and badass or whatever. But yeah, definitely the White Walkers and Faceless Man, and I guess in a way Qyburn. Like I guess that's a bit more scientific, but so that Frankenstein kind of. The resurrection of the dead is something that's creeping more and more. Obviously, you have the magic of the White Walkers raising the dead, but more and more, there's this imbalance between what mortality actually means and bringing and conjuring life from death, reanimated corpses. Like, it's this imbalance in the world.
It's interesting that you point out that the dragons are kind of this cool thing, because I did note watching that there was just a lot of, like, even innocent bystanders and even unsullied getting burnt in the arena, just on the broad level fire. And I thought that was sort of an interesting parallel with the deliberate burning of Shireen. Just the sort of whole scale burning of even neutral and friendly people, just as a byproduct of indiscriminate fire throwing.
But I mean, the way that scene is scored is meant to be cool and fun and triumphant. Like, Danny gets on, the music soars, and she soars with it, and it's like, yay, Danny, fly. And it's like, what about these people burning beneath you?
There's now a whole bunch of non-hostile ash piles.
Yeah.
I thought it was really cool how they just had Jackin just off himself, and it's like, hello, JK, not Jackin. I'm Jackin. No one's Jackin.
So yeah, is the waif dead? Did the waif even exist as a character? What? I'm a little confused. I'm okay being confused, but
it's like Agent Smith in the Matrix. He can just take over anybody.
Well, yeah, I'm wondering why, because I'll say Jackin, even though the no one that wasn't the little girl, whoever he was, he seemed to have taken a liking to Arya, just like Jackin back in Westeros did, but they're different people, right? Like, why was he so thoroughly behind, sort of supportive and faithful in Arya when it wasn't the same person? Like, he just sort of, it's weird the degree that, do all faceless men share a hive mind of some sort?
Yeah, I mean, can you even say that the Jackin that Arya met is the same Jackin, or are they just two separate people wearing the same mask? But again, there is no person. There's nothing beneath the face. It is almost the pure will of the many-faced god with various, cloaks of human flesh enacting that will.
Except some of those faceless will conduits like Arya, and some of them don't for arbitrary reasons. No, yeah, it's not bad. It's just confusing.
It is very surreal and confusing. It's very hard to get a grip on what's actually going on. And that's what a lot of people have criticized. That it's not a bit like Melisandre's, R'hllor magic. It's not clear what the rules are. It doesn't cheapen the rest of the narrative, but it makes it feel like, well, anything's possible, isn't it? Why can't they just do
this?
It's
a bit
Why
frustrating when you just have no idea what's going to happen.
Why can't you
not even an inkling?
Put on Joffrey's face and go rule the King's Landing or something. Why can't Melisandre just shoot 100 shadow babies out? And I like the fact that it's ambiguous. Like, we don't understand the magic. It's arcane and mysterious and deadly to people who practice it without caution. But again, it's sort of it jars a bit with the sort of medieval reality of the rest of the series.
That was on the topic of Melisandre and her powers. That's something that's always just kind of bugged me as an aside, is at the Battle of the Wall, I want to say it was Varamir Sixskins was walked into an eagle or a hawk or something, and Melisandre just barbecued it. And so if she can set an eagle that's flying way up in the sky on fire, why doesn't she throw fireballs more often? Seems like a very useful ability to just spontaneously combust things at extreme range.
It's like flamethrower. Although I think she does mention to Jon that she's really powerful at the wall, it's one of the hinges of the world, and there's a lot of old magic sort of imbued into the stone, so she can draw from it.
She can level up and throw fireballs.
Yeah, it's like it's like a Metroid Prime where you get into a phazon pool.
Maybe she had a wand of awesome fireball, but it only had one charge, so she's used it up now.
She just found it whilst ruffling through the library at the wall. Yeah. Someone should have used this before.
And she used it on a bird of all things.
It would have made would have made any like battle with the Boltons interesting if Melisandre was there and just set Roos's face on fire from across the field.
Yeah. Did any of you guys watch the Inside the Episode?
Of this one, episode 10?
Yeah, of episode 10, yeah.
Not yet. Not yet.
Because they were talking about like the Arya storyline, and they were saying part of the reason Jaqen is angry is because death is like meant to be a gift. It's something that's supposed to be painless and humane, like you're taking away life from someone who's in pain or someone who deserves to die. I don't know how they specify who deserves to die, like some kind of evil in the world that needs to be released, or I guess if someone pays them enough and they feel that the death is earned, they'll enact it. Whereas Arya does it for like purely personal reasons. She relishes in Trant's torment, and she hasn't let go of anything. She's sort of obsessed with vengeance, and she hugs it tighter to herself, and it makes Arya Stark more real than ever. That's her declaration in the scene. She's been spending the whole sort of season saying, I'm no one, but at the end she says, I'm Arya Stark, and you're no one. So she's not willing to give up that part of herself, and the vengeance kind of fuels that part of her identity, that obsession with death and making people who've hurt her pay.
Yeah, I think Arya's storyline is actually still one of my favorites ever in the book and in the show. I think they face it very well. I really like the ending with her going blind. So it's sort of like a cliffhanger, right? I mean, for those who haven't read the books. So I'm glad they face it like that. So we will have more of her story in season 6. So yeah, it's one of the best things coming out from the show, I think, Arya.
The notion that she's blinded is interesting. It makes a bit of sense in this episode because that's the first thing she stabs, is she stabs out Trant's eyes, and now maybe Jaqen's correcting the balance by taking away her sight. But obviously sight is also an important part of who she is. Like, it's the fact that she sees Trant and goes after her, that like she strays from her quest to becoming no one. Sight can bring up memories. And even Syrio Forel, the idea of eyes being important, but also deceiving. Like, you look, but you don't actually see what's going on. But if you take away the eyes and use the other senses, you can discern the actual truth behind what's happening in the world, rather than just the sort of artifice that's covering it.
So how many names is in her list now? So it's Cersei, Gregor, and Sir Ilyn? Yeah. It's 3, right?
Sir Ilyn was retracted after the actor got cancer. I think he's recovering.
Right.
Yeah, I think he's getting better. It's good.
Yeah, well, all she's got really is Cersei, and yeah, I don't know.
and Walder Frey, yeah.
It's either a testament to her industrious assassinating, or the fact that just everyone dies. So if you were to just pick characters by throwing darts at a dartboard, you'd probably be finished with your list almost already anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. She says, like, the many-faced god stole these kills from me, which is almost like she's, in a way, the people on her list will die eventually, because I guess in that religion the universe is correcting itself. There's a kind of karmic justice, perhaps, to these people that are on her list, but it's her pride and her sense of who she is as Arya Stark that wants her to be the one to kill them and to just like drag the life kicking and screaming from their eyes. So it is this very violent, hubristic, sociopathic kind of impulse that's within her that Jaqen is trying to expunge, I guess, which is probably a good thing because she's definitely heading down a dark path. The viciousness of her attack on Trant was very disturbing. That's pretty much all I had to say on Bravos. Do you guys have any more things? Any speculation on Arya's journey going forward? I think we speculated last KrakenCast that maybe Arya would be sent to kill Balon Greyjoy, and that would kick off the Kingsmoot.
Yeah, that was honestly what I was thinking was going to happen this episode, or at least up until a couple episodes ago, because I don't know, I never checked up on it, but I heard rumors that Balon and Yara were like credited to episode 10 this season. But no, apparently not.
Yeah.
I mean, Balon's, the last time we saw him was last episode of season 3, and before that it was like episode 4 of season 2, so I don't think the average show viewer has much of an impression of him.
Oh, it goes back to that like really popular image of the SS abandoned plot lines.
True.
Let's go to everyone's favorite storyline.
Shall we go to the The most depressing part of the episode, Dawn. At the docks, Doran bids a fond farewell to Jamie, who is escorting Marcella and Tristane back to the capital. Ilaria asks Marcella for forgiveness and kisses her on the lips. At sea, Jamie finally tries to tell Marcella the truth about who her father is, but she says she already knows and is glad of it. They hug, but then she starts bleeding from the nose and collapses. Back on the docks, the sand snakes look on firmly, while Ilaria drinks the antidote to the poison she just gave Marcella. What did you guys think?
It was a super obvious poisoning.
Yeah.
Get that out of the way. Like, I don't know anyone that thought, Marcella will be fine. How nice of Ilaria to have made up with her.
Yeah.
I think it's really weird for Ilaria in whatever last episode or the episode before to have gone to Jamie and then said, "Oh, I understand now that Marcella had nothing to do with Oberyn's death, so it would be a monstrosity to kill her." And then she goes and kills her. Like, I don't know, she's snapped. She's just gone crazy.
I don't understand anything that's happening in Dawn. Is Doran in on it? Like, I don't...
Yeah.
Nothing makes sense. Nothing has a point to it.
I may just be clasping at straws, but I want to say that Ilaria had genuinely made peace with Marcella and was just going to let that go, but then Doran told her to assassinate her, and I think that might kind of justify it, but even then there's no real evidence for that other than the fact that Ilaria is like a pseudo-Arianne, and Arianne ended up working with Doran to further like Lannister murdering ambitions. And
I feel like they would have had to give each other like that look just as the ship's going off and Ilaria looks to Doran and they nod and like, yes, it is me.
Yes, and he strokes a cat that's on his lap. In the books, Arianne wants to crown Marcella. They want to kill her. But if the goal was to kill her, why didn't they just kill her in the Water Gardens? That would kick off the war.
Yeah, you're right. It makes no sense. It just...
Why put her on the ship, make nice, and then kill her?
With the heir apparent of Dawn in the next room, presumably.
Yeah, they gave them Tristan. So what is he going to do?
He's sailing to his death.
He's their hostage now. They've weakened
it was a Dornish boat, I think. It was a Dornish boat, right?
It looked like it had the Martell sigil on the sails.
So maybe he will just go back.
Yeah,
and report
maybe
to his father.
If it's a Dornish boat, why don't they just kill Jamie and Bronn as well? Then?
Yeah, why not kill Jamie? Like,
why not take them hostage? Why not do anything other than what they did?
Why not be logical, damn it?
Why not?
What is the point of killing Marcella? They want to kick off a war, but they've done it in a way that weakens their position by letting Jamie and Bronn go and giving them a hostage in Tristan, the heir to Dawn. Like, Doran cannot have anything to do with this plot. But if
you're thinking too hard, Duncan.
But then he has to execute them because if he's not in on the plot, then he has to execute the Sand Snakes and Ilaria, and then they're dead. So who cares what they do? But if he was in on the plot, why would he give them Tristane as a hostage, and why would he not keep Jamie and Bronn as hostages? Either way, it doesn't make any sense.
Scheme? Just, I have nothing to do with Marcella's death. Why would I give you my son, then kill her?
Yeah, it's too stupid. He has complete plausible deniability.
He's just operating on another level that no one else can fathom.
And they're 20 minutes from shore. They're not going to drive all the way back to King's Landing. They're going to head back to dock and say, "Yo, Doran, what the hell?"
Yeah. Tristane just like commando dives off the side and just swims through the shark-free Dornish water.
I literally... This is the worst storyline they've ever done because I don't know what's going on. I don't know the stakes. I don't know the plotting, the scheming. It takes up too little screen time to actually matter in the long scheme of things or to have any substance within the season, but it takes up too much to like be swept under the rug. It stains the season too much because it just colonizes so much of the action, and it takes one of the most interesting characters and one of the funnest characters and just throws them into this black hole where they get to do nothing.
It's like they don't have enough time to like fully develop it, but you also get the feeling if they gave the Dawn scenes more time, they would have like bugger all to actually put in there. Like, it feels very like they're stretching their material and ideas already, and it's still anemic somehow.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
I don't even know how to respond to the
kinda-
story. Like, I really want someone to explain it to me so I can talk to them about it, but no one I've met knows what's happening. Why? It's just incoherent. There's nothing to latch onto. Like,
As Ron said, the Dornish are crazy. Don't look for logic.
exactly. It's just a bunch of crazy stuff, and then they go back and pretend it never happened.
They just
Except
make
they can't,
decisions
because-
by dice rolling.
The Dornish just killed Princess Myrcella. They have to declare war on Dorne now.
There's like a Dornish royal Ouija board, which just gives them all their instructions, like a magic Dornish 8-ball. What
guess-
do I do? Murder the princess. You got it, magic 8-ball.
I guess because Cersei's imprisoned, the Lannisters can't attack Dorne, but surely Kevin would respond, and surely Jaime would respond. I mean, he just reconciled with his daughter. They declare their love for each other, and now he's just to die in his hands. What is his response going to be other than to declare war on Dorne?
Yeah, the man who famously would just go and just straight murder people that he doesn't like.
Like,
Let's kill his niece. See how that works.
Like, the reason to hate the Sand Snakes is because by killing Myrcella, they've extended the Dornish storyline for another season. They couldn't just let it go. They couldn't just
Yeah.
let the boat sail away and be free.
and Jamie won't be going to Riverlands after this, right? I cannot imagine if the storyline is still happening after this.
Yeah.
I've heard some theories that Jaime and Bronn will just take Trystane and just hide in the Riverlands.
It seems like the final scene suggests this idea that Jaime is coming to terms with fatherhood and the love for his children, but that is never explored in any substance. We never see him interacting with Tommen. We never see the motivation for why he wants to go to Dorne, other than it has to be me. We couldn't send a team of, expert assassins to ferry her home. It has to be me. I have to put myself, like this really valuable asset to House Lannister, in danger in order to get this done. And then finally, I guess this one scene where he's talking with Myrcella is kind of the beginnings of a possible relationship between them. They just cut it off at the heels. They're not interested in that kind of character development. It's just plot beat, plot beat, plot beat, without an actual substance.
Yeah, fatherhood is like the last thing that Jamie's interested in.
Well, he seems to be in the books, like with Tommen. He kind of tries to comfort him at Tywin's funeral, and he keeps wanting to get closer to them, but Cersei keeps pushing him away. I mean, that could have been a storyline like I could have gotten behind if they wanted to, do a new story instead of going to the Riverlands, creating a story where it's him coming to terms with Myrcella. Like, he could have just gone on a diplomatic mission, gone there just to check up on his niece and gotten to know her, and then maybe this conspiracy with the Stanseeks arises, and him and Doran have to work together to protect Myrcella and something like that. Anything other than this.
That sounds far too logical, Duncan.
Sorry. The Dornish are crazy, as Bronn says so aptly. He foresaw all of this.
Yeah, maybe they need some way to have his relationship with Cersei, got strained. Because I believe, Cersei will blame Jaime for losing Myrcella. So, yeah, maybe Jaime, he's afraid of Cersei or whatever, and then he decides to go someplace else, which is probably the Riverlands.
It is kind of Jaime's fault, though. The moment he saw Ilaria moving towards Myrcella, he should have just body-checked her off the dock.
Yeah, and the kiss was too long. It was way too long.
Very sensual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had to get every morsel of poison on there.
Point of a Feast for Crows is that Jaime learns to be apart from Cersei, and it's like, wow, Cersei's this horrible person. I don't have any more feelings for her. It should be Jaime realizing that Cersei's a bitch, not the other way around. And yeah,
like that moment where Cersei sends the letter to Jaime, and I love you, I love you, I love you, and he takes it, reads it, and throws it in the fire. Like, that's such an amazing moment. And even the Siege of Riverrun, it's not the most action-packed thing in the world, but it's still compelling. You have interesting characters fighting with each other. You have the last of the Stark Kingdom dying. You have the Blackfish. I guess they wanted to get out of the Riverlands. Like, they've spent so much time in the Riverlands. But the thing they replaced it with was nowhere near as interesting.
Well, yeah, it was because Oberyn was just so popular and so well-liked last year that they're like, we need more of that.
We need to ruin that legacy.
Yeah, that was as far as they got on the planning. It's like, we need more Dawn. And then they left a whole bunch of bullet points for what more Dawn would be, and then they just ignored it and sent it straight to the filming crews. It's like, just improvise so long as there are people speaking in funny accents with cool, colourful clothing, the audience will be happy.
And don't rehearse the fight scenes.
No, of course not. And there were so many cool elements. There's a great bunch of performers. Like, the locations were gorgeous, the sets and all that. But they didn't have an interesting story to go with it. I don't know what they could have done, because obviously they only got a certain amount of time, so they can't dedicate too much time to it, considering how peripheral it is. But they made too many compromises, I guess. And it just didn't work out. It just didn't make a lot of sense. Sorry, I don't mean to keep harping on this, but even the final shot, even the final scene of them on the dock is just so exaggerated. Just Alaria brandishing her napkin and wiping the lips and then casting it aside like this victorious moment, like, yay, sand snakes. And then they all turn and they exit the docks like it's this theater stage. And they just imagine cheering in their heads, and it's just so flamboyant and unearned. And they're just smirking at the boat, like, yeah, we won, yeah, sand snakes. Like, no.
Yeah, we're so cool, guys. It's so awesome.
Tyeen's line, she whispers to Bronn, which is quite possibly the single worst line in the series by a significant margin.
I'd forgotten about that.
It's the beginning of a porno.
Why would you write that? That doesn't even seem like... Is that a medieval... It just seemed like something that was written in the 80s.
If the Dornish storyline was just imported from a worse show, then that line was imported from an even worse show into the original show and then double imported.
Exactly. It's like a parody of Xena Warrior Princess, not a parody of Game of Thrones. It's like twice removed. Anyway, I'm I don't mean to just go at it as like a piñata. It didn't even bother me that much. It doesn't even occupy that much screen time. Just compared to the rest of the season, it just seems weirdly incompetent. I hold this show to a way higher standard, so it's just kind of shocking to see the way this was handled. And just disappointing that Jaime is such a cool character in the show. I love the performer, and Bronn's obviously a fan favorite. They just kind of sacrificed them to this joke of a storyline when they could have been interspersed into the actual events of King's Landing and the Riverlands and be really vital sort of components, and brought all of their charisma and coolness to that.
On aggregate, I total net enjoyment from the Dornish storyline's been very high, but almost all of that enjoyment has been just complaining about it.
True, yeah.
It's fun to watch because it's so bad.
Yeah, because it's so B-movie. You're like, oh man, get the popcorn.
I mean, I was fine with it up until the Sand Snakes fight. I liked what I saw from Doran and Ariohotar. I liked the fight with the Dornish guards. That was cool. I liked a couple of the conversations between Jaime and Bronn, and then you just don't hear about it anymore. Between episode 4 and episode 9, Jaime and Bronn aren't really a presence in the show anymore. It's just odd.
It did actually begin pretty well. It was, very exciting. I was like, ooh, I wonder what's happened. Oh, they just plunged off a cliff.
Anyway, any more to say on Dawn?
Let those feelings out, guys.
Purge now. You won't get another chance.
Oh, I'm sure the Dornish storyline will be back with a vengeance next year.
Darkstar. We need Darkstar, guys.
Darkstar will save all. I mean, that's a good way of looking at it, Joseph. Just click into a different mindset when you get to the Dawn. It's just have fun. It's Xena Warrior Princess. Just let it happen. Anyway, shall we move on to Meereen?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
With the Queen gone and the city in chaos, Dany's counselors hole up in the Great Pyramid and argue over what to do next. Dario and Jorah decide to ride out to track where she's been taken. Tyrion will stay and try and rule Meereen in her stead, with Missandei acting as Dany's proxy and Grey Worm enforcing law and order. Later, Tyrion is surprised to see an old friend has entered the city, Varys. They are overwhelmed by the task at hand, but are glad to be reunited. And, as I said, the Meereenese storyline, I've actually kind of enjoyed the way they've adapted the material, because it's not really the most compelling stuff for me in Feast Dance. It is a little overly sort of convoluted and involved, too many places, too many characters, too many plots that don't really feel that important beyond just getting a sense of how overwhelmed Dany is with the running of a city. So I did kind of like how they condensed the Meereenese storyline, and also for this episode in particular, I appreciated how there is a much more hopeful tone about it than just the rank bleakness of the rest of Westeros. The characters I like them. I like Tyrion. I like Jorah. Even Dario I've kind of warmed to a little bit since the last episode where he was defending Dany, defend your queen, and he was back to back with the other guys. There's kind of the sense of we're all in this together. So I was kind of fine with it. There's problems with it obviously, but I was okay with this scene. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think they did do a pretty good job at condensing it and making it enjoyable, I guess. I was sad that Hisdar died. I understand why he was killed now, because Tyrion needs to be the ruler, not Hisdar, but I always enjoyed Hisdar as especially in the show, as the voice of someone who's grown up in a slave society, and he defends it because that's all he really knows, but he's not a terrible person.
Yeah, it's the human face of Meereen.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. And I'm a little confused now because I always assumed that Hisdar was going to be the one left in charge of Meereen when Dany leaves, just because that's the only sort of choice that makes sense. So I have no idea what's going to become of Meereen in the long term.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's going to happen in the books because he's just proven to be kind of slimy and duplicitous, with Barristan sort of confronting him and him cowering behind his sheets kind of thing, sort of unimpressive as a ruler. But in the show, I thought that's where they were heading. That could have been a good sort of out for Dany because he did seem quite, despite obviously being raised in a slave city, he's got those cultural conditioning. He did seem like a decent aristocratic ruler, somewhat compassionate, somewhat being won over by Dany's goals in transforming the city.
Yeah, I wonder where are the other nobles? I mean, are they all dead in the pit? I don't see, I don't know. I mean, I like the image of having two former slaves and, one political refugee, ruling Meereen, but I don't see, the other nobles will just let it happen if they are still alive. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's very simplified. The nobles are just the nobles. We don't know anything about them beyond that. There's the nobles who are funding the Harpies, and then there's the small folk who sort of go with the wind. Now, at this point, they're sort of turned against Dany, and it's all a big mess, so I guess they'll probably flesh it out a bit more next season. Maybe Tyrion having to deal with various families, possibly, because he is quite a big character. They've got to have something for him. Or alternatively, it could be building up to the Battle of Fire, the idea that it's the external slave cities are moving against them, like Volantis is on the march, Yunkai is on the march, and he has to defend the city, possibly, while Dany is being rescued.
I think for budget reasons, we won't see a Battle of Fire.
I see Meereen ending just Dany just yelling YOLO and just fire and blooding the whole place to the ground, and then moving on to it. That's, I think, the most elegant and efficient way to clean it up. Just have Dany just a fit of madness with her new Khalasar and 3 dragons, just turning the place into a crater and moving on.
And that's the one way of doing it, yeah.
may just be my general boredom with the Dany storyline showing through, but that's where I see it going. And
yeah.
I think terrible, terrible way to fix a problem, but it would fix it.
Cut that Meereenese knot. Don't untie it.
Burn it. Don't even cut it. Just whoosh, fire. I did like Dario sort of taking charge and being reasonable. I've heard it called the biggest plot twist of the whole season, is Dario actually being responsible and delegating jobs to everyone.
True, yeah.
These last few episodes, I'm really warming to Dario. He's becoming quite sort of colourful and sort of playful, and just like the way he was taunting Hisdar at the fighting pits, and the way he's just sort of swaggering around. And it reminds me more of Book Dario. He's getting a bit of colour to him.
I like the opening shot where they're all just kind of moping around the throne, and it's like, oh, poor us. We don't have our queen.
And Tyrion just being a smartass. You love her, don't you? Both of them look up. Tyrion trolling.
Tyrion felt a bit off this episode. He's usually on the sidelines, he's being a bit more clever, he's manipulating people, but also endearing them. Here he felt a bit overly, he was trying to establish dominance and he was just insulting people. Maybe he was just frustrated, I guess. He'd come all this way and Dany was gone and he was kind of lashing out, but it felt a bit less nuanced. Even when Dario's pressing him, why would we bring you? He's kind of fumbling for answers.
I think he just doesn't want to be relegated to the sidelines again. He's spent the last couple months just floating around the east, just being dragged along by others, and he doesn't like the idea of being left out of the action.
Or perhaps he's not comfortable with the idea of ruling again because that didn't turn out so well last time. And a wild Varys appears at the end.
I guess when you consider that he has been traveling to Meereen all this time, maybe it's not a TARDIS. Like, maybe in Volantis he was just like, screw it, I don't need Tyrion anyway. I'll just head to Dany myself.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it makes sense, I guess, within the timeline. They're both on foot. He's going to be able to travel just as fast as Tyrion, maybe quicker, because he can actually use carriages and main roads rather than going through the ruins of Valeria. And he's probably on his way there, even if he loses Tyrion. Like, Tyrion was like, you could be useful, I'll bring you along. But he's still going to make his way to Dany regardless.
Yeah, he was never essential.
No, I just burst out laughing at the screen when I saw Varys show up.
It was so bizarre. It almost perfectly echoed the first scene where he's overlooking Pentos, and it's like, wait, what? Is this a flashback?
Yeah, like
is he imagining Varys? He's just like talking. It's just like a monologue moment where he's pretending to talk to Varys as therapy.
That's a good plot twist, and also a good explanation for how Varys found his way up onto the balcony past all the Unsullied. He's not actually there. Tyrion's just going bonkers.
He already has like schematics, blueprints of all the tunnels in the pyramid. It's like popping out of tiles here and there.
Yeah, because if it was any other character that just randomly appeared, you'd be tempted to call bullshit, but since it's Varys, you just kind of let it pass.
So yeah, it does kind of seem like a retooled version of Season 2, where it's Tyrion and Varys trying to govern a city. It's pure fanfiction, obviously, but it could be interesting. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Like, I like Tyrion, I like Varys, so we could, I've enjoyed their one-on-one scenes this season.
They'll have more one-on-ones to be witty, I guess.
A Missandei Varys scene might not have the best dialogue, or a Tyrion Grey Worm scene, so...
Oh, Varys and Grey Worm, they'll have a few things to talk about.
They can bond. They're like, so did you lose the pillar and the boulders, or just one, or...
It's great not
End
having
of conversation,
isn't it?
Yeah, Varys has a long way to kill Kevin now.
Yeah, God.
Or maybe he won't.
That's quite a hike. Maybe Littlefinger will kill Kevin.
Yes, that.
Yeah.
Well, and then Littlefinger will show up in Marine because a TARDIS makes it incredibly easy to move.
Sort of going back to Season 2 again, they have a similar scene where they're overlooking a balcony. I think it's just before the Blackwater. And Varys brings up Dany and her dragons. And Tyrion sort of brushes it aside. And now, 3 seasons later, they're in Meereen as subjects of the Dragon Queen.
Yeah, it is always interesting to, like, in the books and the show, look back on all of Varys' scenes, knowing that he's supporting Dany and has, like, Dany in his pocket. And just sort of, it recontextualizes everything. It's the same with Oberyn Varys scene when they were chatting, because in the books, Oberyn and Varys were both in on the Dany thing. It's sort of, you got to wonder how much of that is in the show, because the Dornish storyline's such a mess. They could pull out some like Gambit marriage with Dany that was arranged years ago.
Speaking of Dany, let's move on to, I have no idea where. I think some people have speculated the Valerian coast.
Dothraki.
Well, it's next to a coast, isn't it? You can see water, but
there's hills and mountains and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know where. But Dany tries to get Drogon to take her back to Meereen, but he refuses to move. She starts making her way down the hills in search of food, when she is suddenly set upon by a horde of Dothraki on horseback. She drops her ring in the grass as they swirl around her position.
Are the Dothraki in a blender? They're just spinning around her. Like, first you got one ring of horses, and then there's like, oh, let's get another ring, and then the whole Khalasar's like doing the vortex around her. It's just so goofy.
She just stumbled across the national Ring Around the Rosie game that they were all just playing.
Yeah.
It is so Lord of the Rings.
It is, yeah.
Riders of Rohan.
And it's also like Pippin dropping the brooch in the grass, so Aragorn can find it. A Khaleesi once lay here. I'm not sure if they're happy to see Dany, or they're happy to have a hostage because Dany's important, or they're happy because they're going to kill Dany. Obviously, it echoes, I suppose, the end of Season 3, where it's this bunch of brown people holding up the White Messiah, but here, obviously, it's more ambivalent what their actual plans for Dany are. And it's a change from the book, because in the books, Dany is on Drogon, so she's in a position of power, whereas here she's in a position of vulnerability.
Yeah, speaking about Drogon, I think he seemed a little bit, not as big as I thought he is. Because it doesn't look like he's way bigger than Rhaegal and Viserion, who are, their growth are a bit stunted because they are being kept so long in that pit. I don't know, just a nitpick.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, when we saw him in, I don't know, what was it? It was episode 1. He looked massive at the top of that pyramid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Episode 2, yeah. That was a cool shot.
Do you think that Drogon was still injured from the fight? That's why he didn't want to help, or he just didn't give a fuck about Dany?
I think it's sort of like that connection between Dany and Drogon where Dany says she wants to go back to Meereen, but she doesn't actually, and that's why Drogon came. She wanted to escape Meereen, so he came to her rescue and they got off and they flew away together. I think he is wounded, yeah, she's saying. She's saying, like, my poor sweet baby, and just cut to, like, this nest of bones around him.
And then trying to ride him backwards.
That was funny. Oh, Dany.
Well, we're going to see Jorah and Dario, looking for Dany and then maybe try to rescue her from the horde, or I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, this is the last chapter we see of Dany in the book, so we're just as unsullied as everyone else, I guess.
Interesting that she doesn't, end up facing the Dothraki with her dragon, because, in the books, take a shot every time I say that, Drogon is kind of under Dany's control, or they've kind of reached a mutual agreement, and she obviously has a bit more leverage when she's got her dragon right there, but not in the show, apparently.
Yeah, in the books, he, burns a horse, and they're, ripping into it side by side. That was, I think it was a bonding moment. Yeah, exactly. And then he finds... No, I think it's because she's in danger, because a bunch of Dothraki are near, so he allows her to get on her back and then sort of flies above them. So that might... he's not going to take... He doesn't necessarily take orders, I want to get on you and ride you somewhere, but if she's in danger, he'll sort of pick her up.
Well, and she's also undergone her spirit walk, and she's changed her attitude. She's like, no, I'm not going back to Meereen.
Yeah,
we saw none of. We saw none of the spirit walk.
She's had a chit-chat with the grass.
And then Mufasa appears in the stars, and it's like, remember who you are.
I've forgotten who you are. Yeah, that's a cool chapter. You sort of gloss over it the first time, because it's just Dany just having dysentery in the desert.
Yeah,
when you actually go back to the visions and what she, the realization that she has is actually kind of cool.
Yeah, I really enjoy that chapter. I think it's one of my favorites.
Okay, King's Landing. After weeks of imprisonment, starvation, and psychological torture, Cersei finally agrees to confess her crimes to the High Sparrow. She reveals that she had sex with her cousin Lancel while married to King Robert, but denies that her children are bastards to her brother Jaime. The High Sparrow allows her to return to the Red Keep to await her trial, but only after her atonement, which involves walking through the streets of King's Landing, naked and shaved. She agrees, but the task is grueling, and as the small folk jeer and hurl garbage at her, she breaks down into a quivering mess. Upon entering the safety of the Red Keep, Qyburn covers her and comforts her, before introducing her to the newest member of the Kingsguard, a giant of a man, his face obscured. He has taken a vow of silence until all her grace's enemies are destroyed. He picks her up and carries her home, while a look of steely resolve returns to Cersei's face. So, I think this is probably my favorite scene of the episode. Probably one of the highlights of the whole season, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, what did you guys think?
Not enough use of the word brotherfucker. This is the one appropriate chance to use this word. And they said it a bit, but
yeah, it came up once or twice.
Brotherfucker. Just, such a great word.
Yeah.
But the walk
it's very well done.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where we're confronted with our own kind of need for retribution and stuff. Cersei's been this villain for such a long time in the series, and we probably fantasized about her getting her comeuppance, but once we're actually confronted with the most, humiliating, horrible thing that could be done to her, it's like, there's no joy in this. This is debasing. She should be punished for her crimes, but no human being deserves to have this happen to them.
Yeah, it's really awful and scary, and I think when they're about 2/3 of the way through, they get to these stairs, and I assume that's down at Flea Bottom. Certainly the people look much more poor and scruffy, and it looks like they're just descending into hell or whatever, and Cersei's like, fuck that, I don't want to go down there. And I think that's when the scepter starts pushing her down.
Yeah.
And it's just the fear that's consuming you, and Cersei, it's really good, really powerful.
So much of it's done without dialogue or exposition. You don't need her to say, oh shit, that's Flea Bottom. It's just people look scruffy. She becomes much more hesitant, and it's very well put together and very well shot.
Yeah, Flea Bottom doesn't need a title card. You can just feel it on your skin. But I agree. It's a moment where nudity is really pivotal to the storyline. It's important to what the character is going through. Symbolically, she's being stripped of her status and her pride and her beauty and her power, everything that makes her Cersei. And there's only this sort of frightened, lonely person left. She's exposed her true self to the world. And there's nothing, titillating about the nudity. It is meant to be tragic. It is meant to be objectified by the crowd. And it's meant to feel horrific. She's being abused with words and gestures. And you're meant to, she makes a comment at the beginning of the storyline, I want to feel clean again. And obviously you could say she's sort of pandering to what the High Sparrow thinks of her, but in a way you can feel that sense of being made to feel horrible and filthy, and the garbage being thrown upon her, and it's so long, they really make you feel in that moment.
Yeah, I'm glad that they extended this scene because the length is very important, that there's no escaping, there's no getaway really, you're just stuck in this situation. I was actually worried a little that because of the previous gratuitous scenes, Sansa rape being probably the biggest one, that the audience might not respond to this scene in the right way, and they're just like, oh, it's just Game of Thrones showing tits again. But I think they really pulled it off the correct way, the way it needed to be, got the right message across.
Yeah, there's a nice mix of wide angles showing the crowd. You see the Red Keep in the distance, that sort of measurement of how much torture she has left to endure, but also the hope and why she's doing this thing. She wants to get back to her family. She wants to escape this nightmare, but she has to go through hell to achieve it. And the crowd definitely has this sense of not only feeling huge, but also feeling really close, and there's a sense of claustrophobia. The alleys are narrow, the nightmare is closing in around her, and the rhythm of the bell and the constant words, shame, 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 just create this kind of nauseating feeling.
I really like Pycelle's smirk when looking at Cersei. It's
yes, Pycelle. Reaction gifs.
Cersei's look of vengeance at the end towards the city. I mean, it's so good. It made me think that okay, there's a super angry lion there. I mean, she's going. There's going to be a very splendid showdown in King's Landing next season. So I can't wait.
Yeah. King's Landing, of all the storylines, that's the most interesting to me. Just all the different players, all the different plots that are coming to a head.
I really enjoyed also when Cersei was being cradled by the mountain and she was like wrapped up in the blanket, and with her short hair she looks like a baby almost. Yeah. So there was like rebirth as a character, and it's not going to be a good character. She's just going to go crazy and
burn it all.
I liked Qyburn as well. Like the other two men are just sitting, gawking at her with judgment, and he runs over and covers her and cradles her and says it's going to be okay. And she's crying. I liked Qyburn in that moment.
The real MVP of the episode, just being that nice, friendly grandpa we've come to know and love about Qyburn, with the added, necromancer thing.
Yeah, and he had
interesting juxtaposition.
And he had the present right there to make her feel better. Like, here it is. Here's your vengeance. We're gonna get back. We're gonna get them all back for this. And just like the shot of her feet all cut up and covered in slime and glass and dirt, it just like, just this feeling of infection. Like she's just open wounds covered in filth, and really gets under your skin. And like special mention to Lena Headey. She doesn't really speak that much. I mean, she has a bit of a talk with the High Sparrow, but she doesn't say a word throughout the walk. And the whole performance is in her face and in her eyes. And she starts off sort of defiant and prideful, like, yes, I'm having to do this, but I'm still a queen. But slowly, as she makes her way further and further through the crowd, you can just see her face cracking, and she's trying to hold it together, but she falls over and, worn down further and further and further until she finally makes it to the other side and she breaks down crying.
So she was pregnant when they were doing this shoot, so they used a body double.
They did,
Was that for all of it? Did she have any scenes where she was like topless, but they only showed her breasts, or was it just her face being photoshopped onto the body?
Well, no, I think it was the whole. I mean, you obviously see shots of her walking through the crowd, like from neck up. So they used her, but she's probably covered in that shot. And then for the rest, they digitally imposed her face on. I didn't notice it the first time. Like, I knew it wasn't actually Lena Headey just from production news or whatever, but it didn't stand out to me. Apparently, though, it did stand out to a few people. Like, apparently her neck looks a bit too long. It jars a little bit, but I didn't really notice it. But I don't think Glenn Heddy's ever appeared nude on the show, so yeah, it would have surprised me that this had been her. And the High Sparrow. I mean, not that he's been anything but a villain this whole season, but you really hate him in this episode because just the smirk he makes as Cersei's descending into the crowd. He really is this manipulator and conniver, but it's almost from the opposite end of the spectrum where he has this very humble quarters compared to the royal throne room. He's living in these subterraneous, unadorned walls. He's living among the small folk. He's galvanizing power from the bottom up. And he plays the role of the common man. And there is, during the walk, this feeling of just rank discontent among the masses. They've been dispossessed and oppressed for so long that they're really ready to strike back. The dam's ready to burst, and the High Sparrow is channeling that for his own ends.
I do feel like with the Sparrows, they somewhat missed the point of them just when they were doing the build-up, because the reason that you have all these Sparrows is, the War of the Five Kings, the Riverlands has been devastated, and so they've all poured into the King's Landing because the Septs have been burned, the Silent Sisters have been raped, and they're pissed off. And so a lot of these people turn to religious fundamentalism as a coping mechanism. And so that gives you a bit more nuanced idea of the faith. Like, you might not appreciate the things they're doing or the angles that they're taking, but you can sort of sympathize with where they come from. But I do feel like throughout this season, they've been depicted as a bit more religious loonies, like not as complex.
Yeah. I think the way they were depicted is, one, it was too abrupt. You didn't get that gradual build-up of displaced people fleeing to the city, fleeing to the Septs for comfort and for refuge. You could have seen some of that on Brienne's travels, maybe, to get an idea that this is happening all over the country. Instead, we just get one comment from Cersei. And yeah, as you say, the other one is they're immediately posed as religious nutjobs because they're going into brothels and killing gay people, and that's obviously has modern connotations as religious fanatics, whereas in the books, there's obviously bad people among them, but a lot of people seem to be genuine about their belief in the Septs, like they've lost faith in the monarchy and they're moving towards religion to save them, to rid corruption, and that's kind of what's so important about someone like Septon Meribald. He shows the good part of the faith, someone who's actually genuinely trying to help people and help people recover from the war.
That interesting. Someone pointed out to me there's sort of a juxtaposition between Qyburn and the High Sparrow, sort of the science versus faith thing going on, even though it's magic science, but as far as science is science in a fantasy world, and just sort of one supporting Cersei and the other one supporting the common people, and both of them doing sort of rather despicable things by twisting their belief sets.
But having the appearance of these sort of kindly old men.
Both of them are sort of, you could get along with them if it wasn't for some of their more distasteful aspects.
Oh, I'd love to have a beer with Qyburn. Ask him about all his practices.
What do we think about Robert Strong, seeing him in
I liked him.
In the undead flesh?
He looked cool. Looked big.
I wonder, is it the same actor
awesome
that they had? Because
I think it was.
They only have an eye slot. They could totally recast him, but if so, that's a nice touch. Them actually keeping a mountain between seasons is a welcome change.
He was pretty big, even for like that strong man that they've just been using.
Yeah,
maybe it's like two people standing on each other's shoulders because they don't have to show anything.
So the final location for the episode and the season, the Wall. Sam makes a request of Jon that he be sent to Old Town to be trained as the new Maester of Castle Black. He wants to take Gilly and little Sam as well to keep them safe from harm. Jon agrees and sadly watches as his last friend departs the Wall. Davos arrives at Castle Black to beg Jon for men and supplies for the battle at Winterfell. They are interrupted by Melisandre's arrival, with her confirmation that Stannis, his family, and all his men are dead. So we're going to see Old Town, apparently.
Yes.
Yeah, not too surprising. They were sort of foreshadowing it a bit.
But
Well.
I don't really like the fact that they give the Sam initiative, to become a maester, because I don't know, it made John look even more pathetic, I guess. He's just, moping around. I mean, the first thing he should do when he arrives in the world is to have, the greatest presentation of his life with eyewitnesses about what happened in Hardhome. Not, moping and pitying, drinking with Sam. So,
Yeah.
gosh, I really hate it.
It makes no sense that he wouldn't call a meeting and have 50 different testimonies for what happened at Hardhome, just so everyone knows exactly what is at stake. That just seems like cheap writing. Like, logically, that's what he would have done, but he couldn't do that because then they wouldn't have a motivation to stab him at the end. I was wondering if the Old Town plot might also be an excuse to sort of tie into the Ironborn plot, which I think they are casting for next season. So maybe we could have the Kingsmoot and we could have Sam coming up on the ship, the Cinnamon Wind, and maybe they could interact in some way. The vessel gets boarded or something like that, because you sort of need the smaller plots to sort of tie together sometimes.
Yeah, getting some intersections.
Yeah.
That could happen. That makes sense.
Well, yeah, like they might, because they're supposedly casting for a character that is just incredibly transparently Randall Tarley, and you need to sort of wonder what's going to happen with him. Like, is he going to go up to King's Landing to sort out all the, at the behest of the Queen of Thorns, to sort out all the mess going on there? Or is he going to be, the point of focus against the Ironborn? Or is he literally just going to show up to just try to bitch Sam out?
He needs to go collect mace from Bravos, who's cowering in a tavern somewhere.
Just drunk, completely off his face, just singing.
Singing.
Karaoke, yeah.
He's
His
forgotten
singing
all
career's
his
just
jobs.
taken off.
Yeah.
I assume that, Randall Tarley is probably there to confront Sam and,
Yeah.
be a big meanie to Sam.
Yeah, they cast also his brother and sister. So I'm sure probably we're going to, where's Sam's home? Hornhill or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I would be down for some Citadel, learning the Maesters Art at the
Yes.
Citadel. That could be fun.
And finally get a decent sand snake.
Yes, there's one flickering hope for the sand snakes to be
Yeah.
to be
Alaris.
resurrected. Alaris, the Sphinx. I think it also works well because it contributes to John's sense of despair. Like, he's losing the last friend he has left to him, and now there's no one but enemies at the wall. And I was wondering if that might have contributed to the reason to finally stab him. Sam is finally gone, he's his sort of strongest ally, and Stannis is dead. That was the only thing stopping them probably from finally doing it.
Now that Sam the Slayer's gone.
Yeah.
His elite
direwolf.
bodyguard.
Where was Ghost?
He was claimed. He was a victim of the vicious onslaught of the CGI budget.
Yeah. Bloody dragons.
I was very disappointed that they didn't have John sort of getting the because John was flitting through scrolls and Raven messages. One of them could have been or should have been the pink letter, and we see him getting with Tormund and kind of getting ready to go and just take the fight to Ramsay before Ramsay comes after him. That sort of it makes John more interesting, but it also sort of justifies the actions of the Watch to a degree. They're trying to stop themselves getting involved in the realm any further.
Yeah, and the worst thing is they could have actually done it, because Ramsay would have found Stannis' body and he said, "I've killed your king. I want his red whore. I want his onion knight. Bring them to me. I want my reek. I want my Sansa back." And maybe, seeing those threats and also seeing Sansa, because I don't think John knows that Sansa is alive. Maybe that could have snapped him back into Stark mode. And he's like, screw this, I'm going to go save Sansa, I'm going to go kill this bastard.
Yeah, where my wildling bros at, let's go do this.
Let's tear it up. Yeah, Tormund with me.
Yeah,
There's
I'm
a
wondering.
fight, Tormund. Are you down?
The worst thing is I wanted to see him take march on Winterfell. It was such a cool story, and then it's stab. Damn it!
You're like, oh.
Come on, John leading an army of wildlings. That would have been awesome.
And against the Boltons, no less.
I know, and it's bastard versus bastard, snow versus snow. Oh, the symmetry is awesome.
I'm wondering how Tormund's going to react to John getting stabbed, both in the book and the show. Because Tormund seems to like John, just on a personal level, and John's also the one person that's helping the wildlings and sort of someone that Tormund views as definitely recognizing the threat of all the crazy ice zombies. So yeah, interesting to see how Tormund reacts to this next season.
Later that night, Jon is poring over letters in his chambers, unsure of how to proceed. Suddenly, Ollie bursts in, claiming that one of the wildlings has information on Benjen Stark's whereabouts. Jon follows him eagerly, only to be surrounded by several Black Brothers who take his decision to allow the wildlings through the wall as treason and proceed to stab him to death. Jon collapses, his blood leaking out across the snow. So this was the big moment, I guess, that everything was leading towards. Final scene of the season, obviously like a statement. What were your guys' gut reactions?
I loved how they trolled us with Benjen.
Yeah.
I see what you did there.
That was an elaborate troll too, because they put him in the previously on.
Yeah.
Like that was like, it was just this like trolling that was playing out between the show and the sort of marketing of the show.
So meta.
Yeah, I was seriously like, are we going to see Benjen? Like, oh my god, this is... Oh, I can't even. And then he's like, oh, he just got stabbed.
And then Jon gets to the sign and he's like, this isn't Benjen. This isn't Benjen at all.
Benjen's just walked into a piece of wood.
Yeah.
It's a survival mechanism.
Well,
the stabbing
before
itself, that was pretty brutal. Like the shanking sound that the daggers made as they went into Jon's stomach was really, very painful.
Yeah, and they were long too. It was just like slop, rip.
Yeah, it seemed so much more drawn out than it seemed in the, it's been a while since I've read the chapter, but in the books it seemed like they all just kind of dogpiled him and cut him to pieces, whereas here they take their time to one by one just stab, back away, next person in line goes up, stab, and just repeat.
It was creepy.
Form an orderly line to stab Jon.
Well, it was creepy, the ritual of it, because in the books it is like this sporadic moment. Like, Jon makes this decision and they hurriedly try and, let's get him now. Here's our chance, get him. Whereas here it was this deliberately premeditated murder. They get him to run out, they get his guard down with news of Benjen, he gets out there, then they create a little semicircle around him. They have his grave with traitor marked on it, and then one by one, they stab him for the watch. They step back, and there's this... That was part of the creepiness, I think, the ritualized manner of it. There was this almost legal sort of procession to it. And it was like, the way they spoke even, it was just businesslike. Alistair's like, he just sort of almost shrugs. He's like, for the watch. You understand, for the watch.
I'm actually kind of disappointed that Thorne was involved with it.
Yeah.
Because I always say Thorne, he's a complete dick and he hates Jon, but he's also very sort of, he's doing his job. And he doesn't seem the type to actively mutiny.
I would have liked if he had have seen it and sort of tried to stop them and actually died in the process of defending Jon. That would have been a cool sort of twist for his character, because he's obviously been Jon's sort of enemy the whole time. But the idea that he actually believes in the Night's Watch, that he wouldn't allow this. But yeah, they went another way.
They've always struggled actually with Sir Alice's interpretation from the books, because in the books he's more than just the arsehole drill sergeant. He's just an arsehole, and everything he does is to actively go against Jon and just try and fuck Jon over. But in the show, I think they really wanted to change it, and so they just wanted to make him the arsehole sergeant that's really a good guy, kind of, sort of, and they had a bit of adaptation difficulties, I guess, here. They needed someone to stab him.
Yeah, I mean, in the show, he's backing Janos Slint, so you can't have that much respect for him, whereas in the show, he has that one-on-one with Jon, I know men hate me, but at the end of the day, I'm still trying to guard the wall. I believe in this thing.
Have you guys seen on Reddit? There's a subreddit called Fuck Ollie. You should check this out. It's getting a bit of attention. Because everyone was convinced that Ollie was going to get him.
I would subscribe to that, yeah. I'm not a... I mean, I haven't minded him so far. I think it was good to put a human face on the victims of the wildlings raiding in Season 4. It makes sense that he would go and become part of the Night's Watch. He's like the child part of them that they foster. But it felt a bit... you could sort of see the strings working the plot as he turned
all the
against
glances
Jon.
he was giving.
Yeah, it felt a bit simplistic. We hate the wildlings. Wildling kills my family. That's why you die.
Have you read the interviews from Kit Harington and the showrunners about the finality of the death?
Yeah, I think they're all claiming that he is dead, but
Yeah.
I mean, you could read anything into that because, yeah, he's dead.
Well,
but
he
can
is
still be
dead.
resurrected.
Doesn't mean he's coming. Not
Yeah.
coming back. But
Well, what did you read, Silvana?
Well, I don't mind. I mean, yeah, it's okay if he's dead or he's not dead. What I mind is that they actually spoil the potential spoiler, the actor and the showrunners. So yeah, I think it's a very juicy move from them. I don't know.
I don't think they spoiled anything because they would say he's definitely dead if he was coming back, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the way he used the words in the interview make it seem final. He said that okay, I'm done. There won't be any shoot for the season 6. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's okay. I mean, just give it, like in the books, give it a sense of cliffhanger,
Yeah.
for a year, rather than the day after just say, oh, I'm really dead. That's it.
And that's kind of what I mean about the bleakness. There's not even a hint that John might come back somehow, which is obviously there in the books. Like the prologue of the whole book is Varamir Sixskins and the idea that we can have a second life after death, and also Melisandre can, that red god magic can bring people back to life, which I guess they've seeded. They've brought her back to the wall in time to possibly resurrect him, but they haven't established
some
anything.
Unsullied have sort of picked up that Melisandre's there for a reason.
And they have that scene in season 3, I think, where she talks with Thoros of Myr and is sort of aghast that he's able to bring people back to life. So maybe that could almost be, not that I care about Melisandre or anything, but maybe that could be part of her redemption for failing Stannis. You could, bring Jon back to life. That could be her getting her mojo back.
But yeah, it is very interesting because they could, if they wanted to, just leave Jon as dead and, I don't know, have Dany or someone take up the rest of the role he's going to play. But they have said in the past that they do want to reach the same destination when they get to the very end. So I feel that for that to happen, Jon, he has to come back. Like for the narrative to feel as rich as it possibly can, for it to have all this hidden meaning, yeah, Jon has to come back, be the Targaryen he was born to be, and do all the shit he's going to do.
Well, I kind of like the idea that he'd be brought back as like a villain, like a Lady Stoneheart kind of guy, because he tried so hard to make peace between the wildlings and the Night's Watch. He dedicated his life to that and was betrayed, and that bitterness, that hatred might have crystallized in him as he died, and when he's brought back, he becomes this Night's King reborn kind of thing. Like, that would be kind of an interesting twist on the hero's journey.
Yeah, definitely he'll undergo a dark change. He'll definitely get some traits of Ghost, I guess.
Yeah. But the problem is, if Jon's really is dead, what are they going to do with the wall? There's no real POV. I guess there's sort of Davos. Like, I don't think he's a major character in the show. He gets scenes here and there, but they're all orbiting around Stannis. Same with Melisandre. Like, I don't think they're going to be enough to sustain a storyline at the wall. I would kind of be down with them if they do the finality of Jon's death, just having a complete blackout at the wall, and nobody knows what's happening at the wall, and you hear stories of the wall collapsing and others breaking through. That could kind of be cool and mysterious.
Like halfway through next season, there's just a scene of the Boltons in Winterfell as they just get attacked by the others.
That would be pretty cool if the Boltons finally win and then have to face the others.
Yeah, they've just subdued everyone else in the north. The north is just completely just absent of all military-aged males outside of Winterfell, just in time for the ice apocalypse to hit them.
And, Ramsay's hunting White Walkers and flaying them, and they're just fleeing before him.
Yeah.
We're in over our heads, boys. Let's go back to the lands always winter.
Can we rebuild the wall and garrison it against Ramsay, please?
To protect themselves against Ramsay. Yeah, I love the theory that the wall was built by the White Walkers to keep men out of their realm, and men are the true evil force of the world.
Yeah, Martin said repeatedly he doesn't like the whole just good, evil, black-white narrative, so I think there's definitely more to the others invading rather than, we're crazy ice demons, we should attack humans, because that's what we do. Shame we didn't get 1-1 tearing people to pieces. They introduced 1-1 and explicitly named him and showed him showing up at the wall, and yet they didn't deliver.
That's what I'm predicting. The next 5 minutes after Jon's death is the wildlings going nuts and bringing down the
just a
hammer
rampage
on the Night's Watch. And it seems like the wildlings outnumber the Night's Watch like 10-1 in the books. So, in a way, the mutineers have almost surrendered the wall to the wildlings.
Yeah, and when you put it sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, they killed Jon Snow because he led the wildlings through, and the wildlings would destroy them. But because they killed Jon Snow, the wildlings then destroy them.
Yeah, because Jon Snow's the only thing holding this piece together. Without him, it's chaos again. And that is, I guess, sort of a theme in this season, the idea that Dany and Jon are trying to change the world or break the wheel, as Dany says. Jon's trying to create peace between these two embittered tribes, and he almost does it, but in the end, the vicious cycle of violence and human hubris and hatreds win out, most tragically in the form of a child killing him. It's like I think Kit Harington even said this in an interview. Jon was always looking at the big picture, but he forgot about the actual small picture, the people around him. Most notably, Ollie, who is, as much as I dislike the character, he is sort of this surrogate, maybe not son, but this surrogate child or little brother to Jon and the Night's Watch. And in a tragic way, this stabbing almost is this initiation into manhood for Ollie. Like the mutineers have groomed him to do this. And this is what he becomes. This is the fate of the children. Like, I think the past 3 season finales have had something to do with parents or children. Mysa, the children, Mother Mercy. And that's the idea, like the idea of the parents failing the children and the children being part of the vicious cycle again. Any more to say on the wall?
No, not from me.
Okay. That's probably a good place to leave the episode. But did you guys have any closing thoughts on the season itself? How would you rank it compared to the other seasons?
The worst, I guess.
I have a metaphor or analogy to how this season was like. It was like a Jenga block. You know Jenga?
Yeah.
And you have to keep taking things out of it. That's the game. Well, this was like where they were continually taking out plot lines, putting them together, Dawn and Sansa and stuff. And this is where the Jenga pile collapsed in on itself because of the weight and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that clever?
Yeah, they built it really high, but there wasn't enough support down below. It sort of just started to crumble.
There was just one bright orange Jenga block with a sun and a spear on it, and they just decided to
and the snakes.
And they just
punch that block out of the tower.
They just took a sledgehammer to it.
But yeah, I'd say this is probably the worst season.
Okay.
It did have good moments, but yeah.
Yeah.
Like season 2 on the whole was just more consistent.
Okay. What about you, Silvana?
Yes, I think similar with Michael. I really like actually season 2, and I really like the other seasons, but this season I cannot say saying that I really like it, because yes, it has high points in Arya and Cersei's story arcs, but the other parts are just either simplified or simply a mess, especially with Dorne. So I don't know. So it's okay, I guess. It's okay.
Okay. What about you, Joseph?
I do think that Michael's analogy is relatively solid, although I wouldn't say the towers collapsed per se. But there is sort of and I think I can't remember if I did this on the podcast or if I was just complaining to a friend of mine in real life, but I said something along the lines of David and Dan, the less they're adapting, which they're very good at, and the more that they're writing, which they're not so good at, the more we're going to see the quality go down. And now that so many plot lines have hit the end of where we are with the published books, I don't see things getting better from here. But if nothing else, stuff like Hardhome proves that even whilst the general quality's dropping, we can still get amazing scenes and amazing new things.
Yeah, I'm surprised. A lot of people seem to really dislike the season. I'm like you guys. I have really mixed feelings of it. There's so many moments that are really amazing, like Hardhome, like Cersei's Walk of Penance, like episode 5 I really enjoyed. It felt true to the spirit of the books. I guess I'd probably rank it above season 2. Maybe, I don't know, I guess season 1's the high point. So probably somewhere in the middle, probably a little bit below the middle. But the reason I'm probably less harsh on it is because I just think the material they're adapting is nowhere near as good as, say, the material for season 3 and 4. So the fact that they're doing something reasonably compelling with it and condensing a lot of the material that I didn't consider that good in the book, I sort of give them props for that, especially with the stuff on the wall. Obviously, it's problematic. The stuff with Meereen, obviously, there's problems there. But Tyrion in particular, I found quite compelling compared to his book counterpart. And Arya, yeah, I found that like as crazy and weird and excessive as it was at times. I couldn't take my eyes away from what I was seeing. But yeah, I probably agree. It was inconsistent. It was over the top at points. It was shallow at points. But for the big sort of jumbled mess it was, I'm sort of glad I watched it. But I guess the most criticism I can say is sort of ties back to my lemon cake rating. There isn't that need, that drive to find out what happened next. So yeah, I guess that's where I am at the moment. And I probably, at this point, I'm like 50-50 on whether I'll watch the next season. I probably won't review it. I might watch it because like I don't have that strong willpower. But I'm really hoping that Winds of Winter comes out before then, so I don't have to make that decision. But we'll see, I guess. So I guess that's most of what we were planning to talk about. Did you guys have any speculation? We've sort of talked about it throughout the review, but any thoughts on what might happen next season, given that we don't know what's happening in the books?
There'll be trials in King's Landing. We know that.
We know that, yeah.
Yep, with Olenna present. Going to be interesting.
We're probably going to get more Bran and Hodor, which could be...
they'll return.
I always thought that could be a good framing device for flashbacks, like the Tower of Joy and things like that.
Well, we have... there was that casting call for like 3 boys whose descriptions seem... one of them at least seems like to be blatantly Ned. It could be Ned and his brothers or Ned and Robert and someone, but so I think we're going to see some Weirwood TV of the past for a Ned scene at least.
I mean, I would probably just watch those scenes on YouTube if that is what they plan to do, because that sounds cool.
And I think at the start of the season, I was very bitter that there was no news on the Ironborn. So if there is a Greyjoy storyline next season, feel free to like retroactively add a lemon cake onto every week this season for me. Coincidentally, being on KrakenCast, my favorite house would be the Greyjoys, and whilst a lot of people are lukewarm on Feast, I just loved all the Kingsmoot scenes and all the Ironborn scenes there, and I'm looking forward to that. That for me is enough justification to watch next season. Even if they bungle it terribly, it'll still be good to actually see some of my favorite characters on screen.
Yeah, I mean, reading it on the page, I wasn't that into it, mostly to do with Aeron Greyjoy, who's just like this insufferable bore. But I could definitely see that working really well on the screen, just with the performances and the dialogue and just like a big set piece. That could be really entertaining. Theon finding his way back to the Iron Islands could be a thing, like Yara finally bringing him home, maybe? It's part of the Kingsmoot.
We might see Stannis again. Death was ambiguous.
Oh, God.
See Stannis
as a white.
Well, we could see Stannis and Brienne and Pod and Theon and Sansa just being like the weirdest 5-man band and just road tripping their way somewhere.
Yeah, or maybe Brienne, if Stannis is not dead and Brienne decide not to kill him, then she will just, okay, I'll have another, sentence for you, which is going to the wall, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Oh. That could be interesting. Stannis gets sent to the wall as a Night's Watch.
Oh, yeah, because I'm pretty sure that because Jon was the 998th Lord Commander, and there's got to be some significance to that. Like one of the mutineers being 999 and some important character being the 1000th. Or maybe that's just Martin playing with fantasy conventions and special numbers. He might just be messing with us, but there's maybe something to that.
Yeah, but the 1000th Lord Commander, that's like pushing a Jenga cube perfectly into its slot.
And we don't even know if they've got the numbers right.
True, yeah. They can only date back to the 600s. Counting was hard for the Northmen back then.
Maybe we have more Doran scenes next year. We haven't got, the speech, the Viper Grass and Vengeance thing, but I don't know whether it's still relevant for the show, but I really want it to happen.
If the first scene of Dawn is Doran executing the Sand Snakes and then Arianne getting off a ship and saying, "Oh, I'm home, father," that could possibly save Doran.
Honestly, yeah, if the showrunners notice our displeasure with the Sand Snakes and just begin the season just straight up with their execution, they will win a lot of fans back, I feel.
Yeah, the ultimate fan service.
Yeah. Okay. That brings us to the end of KrakenCast for this week and also this season. So thank you to everyone who's listened and commented on the episodes. If you've enjoyed this podcast or any of the other VOK podcasts and want to show your thanks, then please leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. You can also check out our YouTube channel where we are developing quite a thriving little base of subscribers. As always, DragonCast and Wolfcast will be out later in the week, so you can look forward to those. And yeah, without further ado, thank you for joining me, Joseph.
Thank you, Duncan. Pleasure to be here.
Silvana.
Thank you so much, guys. Been my pleasure.
And Michael.
Thanks, Duncan. Thanks for letting me vent.
Well, thanks for coming on, guys. Yep, my name's Duncan, or Valkyrist on the forums. This has been KrakenCast for Season 5 of Game of Thrones, signing off.